All right, everybody. As I told you on the top, and really as I've been telling you guys all month of December, that when the NFL playoffs come around, we will be talking about them. And joining me to preview Super Wildcard Weekend, they're still going with that 3 years into this expanded playoff thing. But Matt Barbato, you can check him out over at the Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. He's here to preview these playoff games with us. He's also a New York Jets fan, so we may have a Jets question toward the end of our conversation. But Matt, it's always good to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to breaking down and previewing these games.
Yeah, Philip, thanks for having me. Great to be back with you. I don't know if this wild card weekend's really going to live up to that super billing the NFL likes to give it, but you know what? It's football. There will be games on. Keeps us busy during the weekend, so I'm looking forward to it.
That's it, me too as well. I kind of wish I get why they want the Monday game, but I actually would rather have the 3 games Saturday and 3 games Sunday.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah, load it up.
yeah, because I need something to do early on Saturday. There's nothing going on.
Yeah.
I guess I'll have to watch some college basketball. And I'm going to say this too. I understood why they called it Super Wildcard Weekend the first year of this.
hmm
It's Wildcard Weekend. Let's drop the Super.
Yeah, yeah. There's got to be like that threshold where it's like, okay, we can't really call this super anymore, especially because, and we'll get into this. I just there might be some unsuper games on this slate that will not be that compelling. So we'll see. But yeah, I think they maybe after like year five they'll drop and just call it
I'll take
wild card.
anything after suffering through that national championship game on Monday
I don't
night.
think
So
I don't think a single game will be worse than that. So we've got that going for us.
that would be a record NFL if that
Yeah,
happened. If
58
we,
points. Yeah.
yeah, if you get beat 65-7 this weekend, it's going to be tough. So before we jump into this, what was your preseason Super Bowl pick? Mine was Bills versus Buccaneers, which could still happen. I don't think it will, but it could happen. What was your like preseason Super Bowl pick?
I was Bills 49ers. I thought Trey Lance, again, this was, a lot has changed, but I thought Trey Lance was going to take the next step in that 49ers offense. I thought he was going to add that mobile dimension that Jimmy Garoppolo just clearly didn't have. Um, that defense has proven to be rock solid, and that might be understating it, but I was pretty high on the San Francisco 49ers. And then the Bills just, even though the AFC is by far the more competitive conference, the Bills just always felt to me like the team above, just slightly better in every area that mattered. Um, but as the season's transpired, I don't know. I don't know if I believe in them as much as I did in the preseason. I kind of thought they were the shoe-in Super Bowl winner. I would have said Bills over 49ers in the Super Bowl. And while I still may make that my like postseason pick, I'm not as confident in it anymore.
I'm with you. I'm the same way. I thought maybe coming to the year their defense would be better. Maybe they try to run the ball a little bit more, but they seem kind of like what they are. And Josh
Right.
Allen gets a little loose with the ball, and that's kind of I'm kind of with you on that. I'm kind of not as confident. I'm still feel like they can do it, but I just don't feel as confident as I did coming into the season.
Right.
Especially you saw them beat the Rams like they did on the opening night. I was like, wow, they're dominating. They're playing really well against the defending champs, and we saw what the
Yeah.
Rams season turned out to be, which was not good. So the first game actually was the Bills. We're going to jump at because the way we're going to do this, everybody, we're not going in the schedule that they're playing. We're just going to go AFC, NFC. At the 2-7 matchup, I'm still getting used to saying that, Matt, with these NFL
Yeah.
playoffs. The Buffalo Bills, who are 13-3 this year, are playing the 9-8 Miami Dolphins, who I wouldn't say they backed into the playoffs, but they kind of limp into the playoffs. Tua will not be playing. He's ruled out with concussion. He has not got out of the concussion protocol, so it will be Skylar Thompson once again at quarterback. So I really feel like this is one of the Bills have won 7 in a row. Buffalo 7-1 at home. They played really well. Josh Allen's played well against the Dolphins. Averaging 352 yards a game. He's got 7 total touchdowns. It just feels like, I mean, this is slam dunk Buffalo Bills without Tua playing in this game.
It's funny. I was looking at the spreads before this, and I was like, Buffalo jumped up to minus 13. I didn't even know the Tua news. I figured the line moved because he wasn't playing, but I didn't know it was official. So that's really interesting. Um, yeah, I don't see how Miami is able to keep up with this Bills offense. Mike McDaniel. People are saying there's speculation he could get fired after this year, or maybe if they didn't make the playoffs. I think he's a really good head coach. I think he's designed a really nice offense that's really revitalized Tua's career. I know we've talked about it before. I was still a believer in Tua, and I want to say you had more doubts on it if I remember correctly, but I kept going to bat for Tua the last couple of years, and it finally paid off this season. But yeah, I just with Skylar Thompson. I mean, I watched that Jets game unfortunately last week, and that kid just. I mean, he's a third string rookie. Like it's just hard. It's hard to expect anything out of him in this game. Um, there's a chance that maybe Miami can move the ball on the ground, but Buffalo ranks third in the NFL in rush defense DVOA. So I just don't see how Skylar Thompson is going to pull off a miracle and win this game. And it kind of works out for Buffalo. It's unfortunate they didn't get the 1 seed, but they might just get a de facto bye week here.
Yeah, it just feels like. And look, I've Skylar Thompson when he's played. I think he's solid. I mean, he's not the most horrible quarterback. He's not inept at the position. But he's like you said. I mean, you need somebody that can get the ball down the field to Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and just is not the guy. And looking at this too, I kind of just wonder the future of Tua is with the concussions and moving forward after this year and after this season is done for them. I wonder what's his future because the Dolphins have to look at it like we're good when he's on the field, but and obviously perhaps he looks like he had a concussion in the second half of the game with the Packers when he threw the 3 interceptions. Maybe that had something to do with those because he was throwing it right to the Packers defenders in that game. There wasn't really a Dolphin receiver around when he was making those passes. I just kind of got to wonder, will the Dolphins look, we like Tua, but we got to make a decision. There's a certain 45-year-old quarterback that's a free agent that may get linked back to Miami. I don't know. I think this is going to be an interesting offseason for the Miami Dolphins with what they do with Tua and really what Tua does next because I think he's got some decisions to make.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a shame because he's finally kind of proven himself and again, people were way too quick to write off Tua, I think. But he's finally proven himself, and now he's dealing with these just awful concussion issues to the point where, you don't even know if he's going to continue his career because it's just the fact that he's not playing in the postseason after he's had 2-3 weeks off now is pretty telling as to how serious this situation is for him. So, yeah, and that's the thing. The Dolphins have a win now roster with kind of a really strong, high-powered receiving core and a defense that I think needs a lot of help in their secondary, but they're in prime position, and now they don't have a first-round pick because they were tampering with Brady. But yeah, they could easily be that team that kind of makes the playoffs and then fails to make it the year before and maybe falls back to earth. I could see that happening in Miami.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting going forward. And like I said, we both have the Bills in this one. I think this was a pretty easy one to kick things off here. Going with Buffalo on that one. The next AFC game, the 3-6 matchup, was just to be on Sunday Night Football. Cincinnati, last I looked, is a 7.5. You may have an updated look on that one. But again, another quarterback that now this is not official, but just recording this on Wednesday evening, all signs are pointing to highly unlikely that Lamar Jackson plays in this one. It's kind of the same thing. The Bengals are playing really well right now. 8-game winning streak. They're only giving up 19.8 points per game during that stretch. Joe Burrow is playing great. Jamar Chase. The defense is playing well. I think the Ravens have a really good defense, and maybe they can keep them in it for a while. They have the number 10 ranked defense in the NFL this year. But without Lamar Jackson, I mean, I think it would still be an uphill battle with him. But without him, it's kind of the same thing as the Bills game. It seems like no win in NFL is easy, but this is kind of closest you're going to get to an easy win in playoffs. I just don't think you would feel like the Ravens aren't going to be able to score, kind of like the Dolphins against the Bills.
Right, and they might be going to Anthony Brown again because I don't think, from what I read earlier this afternoon, Huntley didn't even throw during the open media portion of practice. So they could be going in with another third stringer. I think Anthony Brown's a rookie too. I think he's a rookie. Or he's pretty young player at the very least. And Cincinnati's defense is I don't know if it's an elite unit, but it's very, very solid. It's good enough to contain this offense even with Huntley or maybe even Lamar Jackson if he had played. But yeah, I don't think Jackson plays, and if Huntley doesn't go, then it's really, really hard to see Baltimore pulling this upset, which is a shame because I thought this could have been one of the better matchups of Wild Card Weekend, and we've kind of gotten robbed of it twice because last week was supposed to be for the AFC North, and that didn't pan out into anything either. So yeah, unfortunately, it's like I wish I could find a way for Baltimore to win this game. It's going to have to be a defensive masterpiece where they force Burrow into 2 or 3 mistakes at least, and they can move the ball on the ground. I mean, that is Baltimore's calling card, is their ground game. But against a Bengals defense that's very, very solid against the run, not elite, but very solid. When you have no threat under center, I think since he's just going to load the box and dare, whether it's Anthony Brown or Tyler Huntley, and dare Demarcus Robinson and who even else plays on the outside for that team. I just think they're going to dare that Ravens passing game to beat them. And when they do drop back to pass, they'll just double team Mark Andrews and go, okay, Demarcus Robinson, okay, Sammy Watkins, I think, is on that team now. I think I saw him last week. Like that, yeah. I mean, but that's really sad. Like usually I can rattle off 2 or 3 receivers on an NFL team. This Ravens team just doesn't have it. So I think the Bengals win in a, kind of an ugly, maybe like 23-6 kind of game, 23-10. It's not going to be pretty to watch.
Yeah, I know last week's game was 27-16, and kind of trying to follow that along on red zone. It didn't really feel like it was that close. It really wasn't. The Bengals really were never in doubt in that one. I'm kind of – I feel like it's going to probably be a lot like it was last week, if not worse.
Yeah.
Now, the other AFC matchup, we have
a good game
quarterback. Yes. A good game, hopefully. This will be Saturday on NBC. The LA Chargers, 10-7, will be at the 9-8 Jacksonville Jaguars, division champion Jacksonville Jaguars. Last I saw when I was doing my prep on Wednesday morning, the Chargers are a 1.5-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. The only matchup in the first round between teams that have 2 4,000-yard passers. And I just want to say this about Jacksonville. It's amazing what happens when you have a competent head coach.
That is for darn sure. Yeah, it's amazing. It's been quite a turnaround. And it really only happened in the last month or 6 weeks. The Jaguars they didn't start the season out that well. They had they had that big win over the Chargers, I remember, like week 3, and you were like, oh, okay, this team's interesting. Then they kind of puttered out, and then they just started surging towards the end of the year. Granted, it helps that you play in the AFC South, which is just – I think Georgia could have won that division this year with how terrible it is. But, yeah, I mean, Doug Peterson is once again getting the most out of a star quarterback prospect. Lawrence looks really good. But I will say they were a strip sack, fumble recovery touchdown. If that doesn't happen, they don't probably make it to the playoffs. So, I mean, they're a great story, but they were about to lose to Josh Dobbs at home with a playoff spot on the line. So I'm not totally sold on this team just yet.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like it really for both of them, but both of these teams, this is the first time in the playoffs because obviously the Chargers did not make it last year. When Brandon Staley decided not to go for the tie, and I'm really against the tie, but if you're a fan of Chargers, like go for a tie, you would have made the playoffs last year, but you didn't. So this is their first time at this as well. And you talking about Trevor Lawrence? I wanted to see his stats from last year. He was a 60% completion percentage, 3,641 yards, 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. This season, 66%. Well, that is huge for quarterbacks. A lot of quarterbacks can do that, go up on their percentage of that high. The only one I can remember is Josh Allen from a year to year, how he improved at that. Over 4,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, interception. Of course, having Travis Etienne in the backfield has helped this year. And you're right. They were very close to losing to a third-string quarterback this past week. But on the other side with Chargers, we don't know what with Mike Williams. And the thing with the Chargers, I'll say this: if I'm picking the teams to win with a coach, I'm going with the Jaguars. I trust Doug Peterson a whole lot more than Brandon Staley.
That was malpractice last week. The Chargers had nothing to play for, literally nothing. They could not. Once Baltimore lost in the earlier set of games, they had nowhere to move. It was just like the Giants, and they sat all their guys. What is Brandon Staley doing trotting out Herbert, who dealt with broken ribs early this year, and then probably the two most injury-prone receivers in the league, and Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. And then of course Williams gets like not stretchered, but carted off the field with a back injury. It's like what? You're right. I would probably pick the Chargers in this game to sort of tease that, and I can explain why. But oh my God, I do not trust Brandon Staley at all. He's reckless.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like at some point they're going to make a decision there and go with a different head coach, someone more experienced that just can make better decisions because it just seems like sometimes he is just holding this team back, the head
Yeah.
coach, and they are talented. They're one of the more talent. I mean, you've got a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. I mean, he's been phenomenal what we've seen so far. So I just wonder if this goes sideways, or maybe next year it doesn't go well for them as well, where they start looking and say, hey, we Brandon Staley did a good job getting us to this point, but we need somebody else to take us to that next level.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton would be a great choice there. But yeah, I don't know. Now that he makes the playoffs, I don't know if he's going to be kind of harsh to fire a guy after they make the playoffs. But that whole coaching staff, I can't stand Joe Lombardi, the play caller, either. He's absolutely brutal and just so predictable and just doesn't know how to use Austin Eckler in creative ways. It's bad. But they have so much talent that despite the coaching, they're here right now.
Mm-hmm. So, who are we going with in this one?
I'm going with the Chargers, and the reason why is I just think the LA defense. Say what you want about Staley, but the LA defense is playing really good football right now. I like where that unit's headed. They're finally starting to get healthy. Bosa's back, and I think they can take away Jacksonville's biggest strength offensively, which is throwing the ball. The Jaguars, they rank sixth in passing DVOA, which sort of measures a team's productivity and adjusts it based on the quality of competition they played. Well, the Chargers, they rank 10th in pass defense DVOA. So the Chargers are kind of that type of team that and I don't know if Staley was the like architect of this, but the whole idea of invite teams to run the ball, play two deep safeties, and just don't get beat deep and force teams to sort of drive the ball on you down the field. And that's why the Chargers rank horribly against the run. They're 29th in DVOA in that category. But they do really defend the pass well, and they can get after the quarterback with Khalil Mack and Bosa. So I just think they're going to be able to shut down, maybe not shut down, but limit Trevor Lawrence. And I think he's going to face similar struggles to what he saw in that Titans game. So, Staley will probably go for 2 or go for 4th down on his own 4-yard line and screw it all up. But I will take the Chargers and pray.
Yeah, I'm going to go as well. I think this is going to be a learning experience for Jacksonville because while, like I said, both teams are new to this. It's been a while for both teams to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I just feel like Jacksonville, though, is a younger team in this because the Chargers have at least played in some big regular season matchups, like the games against the Chiefs, within their division. And in past years, maybe, against the Broncos or not Broncos, but same against the Chiefs mainly. Yeah. They've done well against them and some other really good teams in the NFL. So I think they're more prepared for this of the two young teams. I'm with you. I'm going to go with the Chargers on that one just because I feel like this will be a good learning experience for the Jaguar teams. It should be if they do win, if they do lose, whatever happens, there's going to be a lot of positives, obviously, make the playoffs going to next season. They're going to be a team I think a lot of people are going to love because of what they did now.
Definitely.
So let's jump into the NFC. Matchup I don't know is kind of interesting. I kind of wish another team was sitting there at the 49ers if they wouldn't have choked on Sunday night, but it is what it is. I've moved on, everybody. I've moved on from the Packers not making the playoffs. I'm okay. No need to email me and check on me. I'm fine. But the Seahawks, who would have expected? The Seattle Seahawks, you trade away Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson always acted like the Seahawks held him back. They were better this year. Geno Smith, really good year for him. They're playing the Brock Purdy-led 49ers. This will be 3:30 Saturday on Fox Central Time. At 49ers, they're a 10-point favorite, 42.5 over/under. You talked early on that this was the 49ers were your preseason. Super Bowl NFC pick. They played really well under Brock Purdy. He doesn't turn the ball over. And I just got to say, Kyle Shanahan is just good with any quarterback. I don't think it matters who his quarterback is. If he's competent between the years, he can make it work. Uh, I feel like going in this one, it's a great year for Seattle. Tremendous job getting to the playoffs, what they've done with Geno Smith and all of that. But I kind of just feel like they're not going to have a lot of success offensively. And I feel like the 49ers probably win this one by a couple, maybe by double digits, 10 points, 10 to 14 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think they win pretty handily. I don't know. It's a tremendous overachieving story for Seattle, but they kind of fell apart down the stretch. I mean, they needed to beat the Jets, who totally vomited on themselves, and then they needed to beat the Rams, who, if not for a really soft roughing the punter call, they probably lose that game. They're not even here. It's probably the Lions in this spot, which, man, that would have been a much better game. But yeah, I don't trust the Seahawks defense at all. 21st in overall DVOA, but 25th against the run. So I don't think Purdy's going to be asked to do a whole lot in this game. I think you're going to see a lot of designed runs for Deebo Samuel. I think Christian McCaffrey's going to run wild. And I think it's going to force Geno Smith to sort of try and play hero ball. And he's got the weapons to do it in DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, but the 49ers defense is just too much of a lockdown unit. I feel like the 49ers will get up big early. Geno will make a couple of mistakes to compound it. And, unfortunately, this is the first game of the Super Wildcard weekend, and I think it's going to be a total blowout.
Yeah, and then it doesn't help. I think there's rain in the forecast. So that kind of does shift things even more to the 49ers for their style of play versus Seattle. When you're more of an aired out team, it's harder, a slick football.
Right.
Mistakes happen, and then you're a running team like the 49ers.
Yeah, and Seattle can run. Kenneth Walker's a good player, but, they're just running into a brick wall that is the Niners D, so.
Yeah, so it will still be better than Monday night, though. So that's the positive.
Yes, it won't be 65-7. It may be 64-7.
Man, it'll be one of those weekends whenever a game goes sideways. I will think this could be Monday night. This could be Monday night. So I will try to stay positive when the games are going in the negative direction. Right. The 3-6 matchup in the NFC will be on Sunday, 3:30 Central Time over on Fox. That is the Minnesota Vikings at 13-4 hosting the New York Football Giants at 9-7-1. The Vikings are a 3-point favorite in this one. Over under is 48. The Vikings are 11-0 in one-score games, 2-4 in the rest of the games with a differential of negative 73 points. So when they win, it's close. But when they lose, boy, do they lose. They get run out of the building. These two played a few weeks ago, too. So it's going to be let's hope this game is as good as that one between the two. But what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I think it will be another close game because I don't see the Vikings blowing the Giants out. And the Giants are another team where I'm just like, how are they in the playoffs exactly? Like Daniel Jones and like my cousin and wide receiver. It's just like other than Saquon Barkley, they have nothing on offense. And the defense is very aggressive and blitz heavy, but they're 29th in DVOA. Like, this is not a good defensive unit. So if Brian Dable doesn't win Coach of the Year, we riot because this guy has literally turned a terrible roster into a playoff team. I don't think the Giants defense will be able to contain Justin Jefferson in the passing game. I think this is going to be a very sexy upset pick for people, which I get because the Vikings have just been so ripe for a letdown game and just to get knocked out. But I don't think it happens this week. I think they may get exposed the following week should they play San Francisco. But yeah, I see the Vikings squeaking away in a close one. I just think they have more talent, and I'm not backing Daniel Jones to win a playoff game. He threw for, I think, like 3,200 yards this year, which is really hard to do when you've played a full season. He's just so limited, and I think the Vikings will sell out to stop Saquon and just make enough big plays with Jefferson in the passing game to get it done.
The only thing the Vikings need to worry, like I said, this is a this is the second matchup of the day. Like I said, 3:30, 4:30 Eastern time. So this will lead into prime time.
Yeah, it's gonna
So
get
in
dark.
late in the game, will primetime Kirk Cousins make an appearance? And he's 1-3 in the playoffs in his career, but this is the first time he will be at home in a Vikings home playoff game. So
Hmm.
that's important too. I
Yeah,
just want to throw it out there. Kirk Cousins, primetime Cousins could show
good
up
old
late in the
Kirk. Yeah.
game.
Next
But yeah,
week, next week, I think he gets exposed.
yeah, I do too as well. Just this big games, he just it's just wild how this team. It is impressive though, being 11-0 in one score games. I mean, this is the NFL where those things can just. It's just, a lot of times it's whoever gets the ball last,
Yep.
and they have figured out ways to win these games late. So, and
And I
that
think
is impressive.
they went like 1-9 or something in one score games last year. So it's just amazing how that pendulum kind of comes back and it all evens out.
Yeah. So, yeah, and we both got the Vikings here.
Yes.
So the
Yes.
last game, which I get why ESPN this is a good primetime Monday Night Football matchup. The 12-4 Dallas Cowboys, the 5 seed, playing at the 89 Tom Brady led 4 seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I said, Monday Night Football, ESPN or ABC. I think it's on ABC too as well, simulcast. I think, and I'm sure the Manning brothers are going to be doing their deal as too as well. Dallas is a 2.5 point favorite. I'm gonna stick by a rule, man. I have always believed I will not pick against Tom Brady in a playoff game. I'm not doing it here. I'm just gonna let everybody know I'm gonna pick the Buccaneers to win. But I will say this: Michael Parsons could be big. But we know if this thing's close. I mean, the Buccaneers have been bad this year. They're not good. But
Hmm.
if you're gonna beat them, you better put your foot on their throat and end it in the first 3 quarters. Because if it's close, Tom Brady's going to find a way to win it. I think that's what's going to happen on Monday night. I think Tom Brady engineers a game-winning drive in the final minute to beat the Dallas Cowboys due to another Dak Prescott interception.
Oh man. Oh boy. Would the city of Dallas and the entire state of Texas just riot if that were to happen? Um, I agree. I was kind of dreading this matchup because I don't respect either head coach, like Todd Bowles, who clearly is just he's great defensive coordinator, but just over his head as a head coach, versus Mike McCarthy, who's just a terrible situational coach. And say what you want about the Commanders game last week, but you're playing all your starters. You still had an outside chance at the 1 seed, and you looked just terrible. You looked
Mm-hmm.
unprepared, and maybe that was by design. They were running vanilla offense, and okay, fine, but they just looked awful. And maybe I need to let that go and not keep the last thing I saw in the back of my head. But we've seen this so many times with the Cowboys in the playoffs. They don't rise to the occasion. Um, and I think Chris Godwin in particular is going to be a problem for them out of the slot. The Dallas defense still ranks very highly in terms of all the key metrics. They're second in DVOA, but that secondary is kind of fallen off a little bit. They're still a little too turnover dependent for me, and you're just not going to get those takeaways against Tom Brady. Now, granted, the Buccaneers have sort of been that stumbling, bumbling team this year where they just find ways to screw up. It just seems like anything that could go wrong can. But I will trust Brady. I will trust that he will be getting the ball out quickly against this fearsome pass rush. And I still think, even though the Bucs defense is not at the level it has been the last several years, I think it's still good enough to get enough stops. They're healthier in the secondary. Their front seven still has a lot of talent. Um, I think they're going to make life difficult for Dak, and I don't think the running game's going to get much going. So I like the Bucs, but you know what? At least we'll cap off Super Wildcard weekend with a good game because I think we're going to be itching for one after some of the games that will precede it.
Yeah, I think these two will struggle enough on offense or have been struggling enough offensively lately that they can't score a lot of points. So it will
Yeah,
make it a close game, which should be
yeah.
fun to close it all out. Last week, we were actually about to hit 30 minutes. So after we got done with all that, I did say I had a quick New York Jets question for you. So watching the Jets this season, you can tell this is a team, they are headed in a better direction where they had been.
Mhm.
Um, they've got pieces there. They've got a young group. I'll be really intrigued with Brees Hall when he comes back next year at running back. How much of a jolt, what he do when he has a full season. But obviously, quarterback is an issue. So my question to you is this: do you ride with Mike White next year? I don't think there's any way you have to move on from Zach Wilson, or do you think they should make a move, either free agency or draft a quarterback?
Yeah, it's such a layered decision. I think Mike White is like he's a really quality backup. Um, I think he could be the next like Chase Daniel, where his value goes up the less he plays because it's just like he's had enough good showings with the Jets where it's like, oh, he's a great quality backup, just the guy you want in case your starter goes down. But I think his ceiling is really limited. And again, it's like you go from watching Zach Wilson, who makes like every routine throw look insanely difficult, and then you put him in, and he's like making these very routine throws, and it kind of elevates his stock in your mind because he's making the routine look routine, which is what competent quarterbacks should do. So but I don't think the Jets were going to the playoffs with him under center. Um, I think the pie in the sky, as we were kind of talking off air, is making a move for Rodgers, but I just don't think I don't think that's going to work out financially. So that I'm ruling that out. But I feel like a Jimmy G, not the biggest fan of a Jimmy G or a Derek Carr, but at least they're known commodities and they're competent, um, and they're good enough to get you to the playoffs. I don't know if their ceilings are quite high enough to make a Super Bowl run, but I think that's the direction the Jets go because I don't think the trade market's going to be very robust, and I can't see them doing this whole start over cycle with a rookie quarterback because the defense is built to win now. They've got the young skilled playmakers that they can't waste in their prime of their careers. So I think they will just go with the Garoppolo or Derek Carr route.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason from quarterback standpoint because we do have some good quarterbacks coming out into the
Mm-hmm.
draft. And then I feel like we're going to see some movement with some veterans and some quarterbacks too as well. So it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting, the Jets and among other teams, because we'll see what decisions they do make. And Matt, this was a good decision to have you on to this week's edition of the show to preview the NFL Super Wildcard Weekend. But if listeners and viewers want to check you out online, where can you find you and all the work you're doing?
Yes, if you want to check me out online, you can follow me on Twitter at Real Matt Barbato. I try to be better about posting all my articles on there from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. Those are the publications I work with. So fantasy football season's kind of winding down, so I'm not doing as much work there. But we are doing a little bit of look ahead stuff to next year, if you can believe it. If you want to start thinking about the 2023 fantasy football season, you can at Fantasy Pros. But I'm also going to be doing a bunch of sports betting stuff for the NFL playoffs at bettingpros.com. So some more current and recent stuff you can find there. So yeah, it should be an exciting playoff race. I think once we weed this weekend out, I think this is what it's going to be. It's not super wild card weekend. It's weed out wild card weekend because I think you just got to kill off some of these teams like the Giants or like the Ravens and like I'm trying to think the Seahawks, like just the Dolphins, just the teams that got there but are not in that cut above. And you know what? That's okay. I'd rather we get the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals all still hanging around come divisional round than have some like random surprise team make a run. The NFC, maybe that's more plausible, but AFC, I'd rather see those three big dogs in it.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I like how you word that. Not super wild card, super weed
No, I
out
got to
wild
use that
card weekend.
somewhere. I got
Yeah,
to try
there
and
you
work
go.
that. That's the first time I use that, so
That's,
I like
that's
it.
a
But
that's a good one. That's a good one. But anyways, Matt, appreciate the time and look forward to doing it again sometime down the road.
you know where to find me, Phillip. Anytime, happy to do it with you. Thank you again for having me.